Good morning. I'm here to tell you about MySQL and MySQL Workbench, which is basically the equivalent of the SQL Server Management Studio and required to actually operate on your SQL database just like we use the Management Studio for MS SQL. It's the second most popular database system on the internet. I'm assuming that my MS SQL is the current popular. Now the desktop is divided up into three sections, whereas on MS SQL it's just one big section. Little, in my opinion, a little less clunky to work with, but this is also an older version. It's divided up into server administration, data modeling, and SQL development. Data modeling is where you create your EER models. Server administration is where you set things like security and database links, and SQL development is where you build your databases. Alright, and we'll go ahead and open up, start with SQL development and open up a version that I've already got set. It's called Bob and it's on my local host, which happens to be a netbook computer which with Linux on it, which shows its cross-platform compatibility. This works on either Linux or Microsoft, and it's really scalable. I don't think I could run Microsoft SQL Server on this machine. It's just 2 GB of RAM, an Atom server, and a 120 gig hard drive. So plus I'm also running the video capture software we're working on right now. That goes to show it's very versatile. Anyway, let's go ahead and open up my server Bob. As you can see, I've set basic security, really simple. Now one of the bigger differences, we'll come back to this in a minute, is instead of calling each individual one as a database, they're called schemas. I have 2 right now. One I set up that I used the example from our classroom effort. You can see it took me a little bit of time to put it together, but about as much as I would have with the Microsoft SQL. I haven't populated this database though, so I really can't do a lot with it to demonstrate. So what I'm going to do now is I'll open up this one, which is a much smaller one, 2 tables right now. And as you can see, right click, you got it shows the columns, comp ID and comp column, and all the other information. And then the other one is software, which contains the software that should be on each machine. As I said, it's a very simple database, but here we can select, just like in Microsoft, select rows. You can see right here I've got 3 versions of software on it. The software ID key, the primary key, the title, and the comp ID, which right now for all of them is null. Now we look at the computer table. We'll do the same thing here. And here you have it. I've got 4 computers listed, 1 through 4. And you'll notice basically all it does is it creates the SQL to do the same thing. This is just automating the SQL process. Here's a query I set up earlier. It's again very simple, but we can execute it. You can see the syntax is basically the same as Microsoft SQL, and it pulls up everything in the where the comp column is HP, and I've got 1. So pretty straightforward. You can create a new, pull down a new tab for executing queries. If you want to create a table, say we want one for hardware, we'll just right click, create a table, and we'll call it hardware. My keyboard is always a pain. You can even select which engine and all that stuff. We stick with NODB, which is the default. Now one of the interesting things is it defaults to the column name ID hardware, whereas in our class we go hardware underscore ID, and it's selected as a primary key. And I like to set the auto insert, though for some reason I have problems getting it to do that. And then we can click down underneath to add, say, hardware type. Do the underscore there. We'll make that variable character. And we'll go ahead and add one more line. I accidentally added two more lines. What we're going to do is delete that out and come up and work on this one. We'll call this comp ID with the idea of making it our foreign key. Integer, because it's a foreign key and therefore automatically integer. And then we can set up on this table the foreign keys. You have to manually do that. You can draw it there later on. But we'll call this one ID. Sets it up. Okay. Reference table will be the comp. And the indexed column will be comp ID. The reference column will of course be comp ID. And thus you've set up your foreign key. See if it'll let us apply. And there you go, you've just created a new table in the system. And like I say, you've got ways to handle just about everything in the in MySQL as you do in MSS SQL. You can set up views. Routines are basically stored procedures. So it's fairly straightforward. Now we'll move back out. We'll take a look at data modeling, which is interesting. You can have it build a data model from a previously created database, which allows you to do some interesting things such as reverse engineer. What we're showing here is the previous one I made for the database, and you can see it's got the automatically created all the links. That's one nice feature it has over the Microsoft. And move it around. We can add tables and such. Set up the routine groups. There's a whole lot of features here. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to go through all of them. Going back to home, we can create a brand new EER model, or create an EER model from an existing database. We'll go ahead and save. This that crashed my system. So there are some limits to how easy it is to do some of this stuff. But that has more to do with limitations of my system than it does the database manager itself. Try creating a brand new one from an existing database. We'll do it from Bob, just to demonstrate basically how to do it. And we'll do it from CPSC 2100. We'll pick that schema as opposed to that database. And it's retrieved everything. We do a finish and execute. And next and close. And there you have it. And it looks just like the other one. You can move things around, and I'm sure when you scale the database up quite a bit, I imagine this would be even more handy. So right there's your basic overview of how to create your EER diagrams. And you can get a little bit more complex, adding columns, etc. with it. Now under server administration you have the usual, and of course once you set security you got to go into security for everything. But Shows you the load on your database. Obviously, because my system's so small, I'm loading this up quite a bit. Memory usage is quite low though. Connection, where you can security, where you can set user privileges. Query an entire database with stored connection. So basically, and it opens up a query window, just like before. So you can see overall it does everything that MS SQL does. It's a little different. It's a neat thing to play with, because it stretches your brain and gives you experience. Not to mention the fact that this is quite common on the internet, both because it's relatively inexpensive. Even if you buy the commercial version, I believe with the Enterprise Edition you get unlimited connections with your initial price tag, which is around $3,000. Compare that with Microsoft SQL Server, which charges you, I think with your $3,000 or however much it costs, you get 25 connections. So right off the bat, it's a lot cheaper, and as long as your internet service provider is providing it, you get to use it for pretty much for free. That, which is the other aspect, is for the open source version. You can use it for free. You know, if we weren't part of this classroom, we wouldn't have gotten Microsoft SQL Server to play with. So this gives you the possibility of playing around with a database. And that's just a basic quick overview. You can keep going on this for hundreds of years, whole libraries, blogs, etc. If you have questions on it, you've got a myriad of people working on this diligently non-stop that you can ask. If you pay for the commercial version, Oracle provides a huge amount of service. So just like anywhere, it's got a lot of advantages. So hopefully this gives you some information, and we'll talk more about other items later. Thank you and goodbye.